Welcome back, everyone. It's been such a great conference today. Let's welcome our last presenter. Avalon Advanced Materials Inc. trades on the OTCQB under the symbol AVLNF and on the TSX under the symbol AVL, and is a Canadian mineral development company specializing in sustainably produced materials for clean technology. Please welcome its president and CEO, Don Bubar. Welcome back, Don. How you doing today?
Thanks, Anna. Good to be back and provide everyone with an update. Things are starting to really move forward for us.
Wonderful. We look forward to hearing your update. So take it away.
Okay. Well, as I've been pointing out for quite a while, we've had this project for over 25 years, but its time has finally come. And those of you that have been watching our news flow will have seen the announcement last Thursday we got an MOU signed with LG Energy Solutions on helping them create a supply of lithium hydroxide for their planned battery materials production facility in Southern Ontario. And just yesterday, we announced that we've got an offtake agreement for our petalite lithium mineral product from a major glass ceramic manufacturer and lots more interest. So I will be elaborating on some of that news here shortly. Your reminder on all the forward-looking statements I'll be making today. And the basic corporate information. So we have over 400 million shares outstanding now, having been around since 1995. But we continue to be one of the leaders in this emerging new sector on critical mineral supply chains, and hopefully we'll start to attract more and more recognition from investors that we are one of the leaders in this space going forward. We have enough funding right now to get everything moving forward and are just looking for investing partners now to collaborate with us on getting everything going on our lithium battery materials refinery plans. And we've always been a supporter of implementing principles of sustainability and ESG in our business plan, because we learned early on that if you're going to produce materials for clean technology, many of the end users audit their supply chains to make sure they're produced in sustainable ways. So that's been part of our whole business model for some time now. And last year we got a risk rating from Sustainalytics that was very good, actually. So we're very well positioned going forward here. And this is our asset base. I'll be talking mostly about separation rapids and lithium here today, but we have had a diversified asset base to position us well to be able to serve new demand when it comes in one of these non-traditional commodities. Never expected they'd all be in demand at the same time, but I guess that's in the category of nice problems to have. I'll give you a little bit of an update on our lily pad and East Kempville projects later on. I continue to try to inform regulators here in Canada on how producing these non-traditional commodities like lithium, non-exchange traded, is a very different business from the traditional mining industry. And it's much more like an advanced manufacturing business because it's all about designing the product to meet the needs of the markets. So mining regulations here really need to be adapted to recognize these differences in traditional mining, that it's not about trying to find the biggest, highest grade resource you can and then making the biggest operation you can to keep your operating costs low. It's about designing the product for the market and then scaling it based on the demand in the marketplace for it. And often you want to make it scalable so you can increase that production over time. And as many of you may be aware, I've been promoting the opportunity that historic mine wastes represent for some time, as the mining's already been done and there's all this material sitting on surface, and in many cases there's all kinds of critical minerals in there that had no value when the mine was operating, but do today. So we got to start to get that recognized as an opportunity. We are starting to make some progress here in Ontario in terms of the government now recognizing how critical minerals is a very different business. And they implemented this new critical minerals strategy, and that got announced back in March, actually. And a lot of the things that are listed there are things I've been advocating for quite a few years now. And more recently, the federal government is also creating a critical minerals strategy and have budgeted quite a bit of money to help new players in the space like us get these supply chains started. So things are starting to evolve favorably in terms of recognizing how different this business is from traditional mining. And I've also been very actively trying to promote the opportunity for Northern First Nations communities to start to recognize how there's many opportunities in their traditional territories to identify resources of these non-traditional commodities like lithium and get involved in their development. Many of them do not participate in the economy yet. And this is going to create a lot of new opportunities, especially in Northern Ontario, because there's hundreds of lithium pegmatites, and they just have to basically start to get out on the ground and start to recognize them and stake them, and then bring in companies like us to work with them on developing the operation going forward. So it's a huge new opportunity for First Nation communities in the north. And just where we are located, we're in northwestern Ontario, just north of Kenora, and not too far north, so we have pretty good infrastructure there already, road access, and we're quite close to a hydropower dam that we can probably access going forward, so we can be a good example of a producer of lithium that does it in net zero fashion. And we're also close to both major railways, so that'll give us good access to getting our products to the markets. And our pegmatite resource is a pretty unique one now in that it's a rare type of LCT pegmatite. That's lithium, cesium, tantalum. And the main minerals in it are petalite and lepidolite. And petalite is one that has always had demand as an ingredient in high-strength glass ceramic products. It's a high-purity lithium aluminum silicate, and that demand is going up. As we announced there recently, there's more and more interest because China now controls the supply on it. So we're in a good position to be able to produce petalite for that market as well as the battery materials market. And there's another lithium mineral, lepidolite, that we can also produce and use for extracting the lithium to make lithium carbonate or hydroxide. And as I just said, we've got lots of interest now in the petalite for glass ceramics. Doors opening wide for us to be able to serve that market now. And hopefully we'll be able to get going here fairly quickly. As you may have seen, we announced that we have an offtake agreement now with one of the major international non-Chinese glass ceramic manufacturers, and a lot more expressions of interest from others around the world, because now there's a real global shortage of supply of petalite, and we're the only potential significant new resource in the world that can create a new supply fairly quickly. So we want to get that moving forward and then bring along the battery materials production afterwards. And that's our land position on this map. We're now in the process of upgrading the access road to the site and preparing the aggregate permit for installation of a demonstration scale process facility. But I like to point out that while our main resource, called the Big Whopper, is still the one where we're going to get started, we added more claims to the northwest, and there are more lithium pegmatites. There's basically a belt there that extends all the way into Manitoba with more of these same types of pegmatites. And we found one that looks to be a fairly significant size a little over a year ago that contains a lot of coarse-grained pedalite. Probably could be another significant resource that can add to future production going forward here. And that pedalite pegmatite is we call it snowbank, and you can see on the picture on the left side there how big it is. And it's all white, so that's why they got named snowbank. But it's very coarse grain, which makes it easier to process to recover the pedalite and make the concentrates for the many end users in the glass ceramics industry. And it may well be zoned with other zones within it that might contain large concentrations of the rare cesium mineral pollucite as well as tantalum. So we're now getting in ready to do some drilling on that to see how big it might be and what else might be in that resource. Hopefully we'll get going on that this fall. But of course, the battery materials supply chains is the big thing now. And our vision has been for some time to establish a regional refinery, because as I mentioned earlier, there are lots and lots of lithium pegmatites in northwestern Ontario. So if we get a centrally located facility that's the midstream processing capacity that can be a buyer of concentrates from other emerging producers, will help them get going and be able to sustain a supply going forward, not just relying on our resource, but being able to access concentrates from other new producers and just buy the concentrates. And that'll make it much easier for First Nations to get involved, because just developing a small open pit or quarry operation to produce it is not very high cost, and they'll make a lot of money selling the concentrates to us going forward. So that's still our vision here, and we're now in the process of acquiring an industrial site on the waterfront in Thunder Bay that looks to be an ideal site to establish the refinery on. And once we get that acquired, then we'll be able to get going on finalizing the whole feasibility study level model for both the site and the Separation Rapids site. And Thunder Bay is looking for another industry to replace the forest products industry that's on the wane now. So supporting these new supply chains on lithium and other critical minerals makes total sense because of the abundance of resources in northwestern Ontario. And I've been trying to inspire Lakehead University too to get more involved in some of the research on how to better produce these and on innovating some of the end uses for some of these non-traditional commodities like cesium that has so much potential in new technologies. So on the refinery plan, our plan is to create a wholly owned subsidiary that'll be the owner of the refinery, initially just acquiring the site, but then we want to attract one of the end users to partner with us on it to help us get access to all the capital we need to build it, because It's an expensive thing to build. It's going to be at least $500 or $600 million Canadian dollars. So we had signed an LOI with a major Indian company, the Asar Group, back in April, but they've been very, very slow to finalize an agreement. So we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, we've had lots more interest in working with us on this from a number of EV manufacturers. And as I mentioned earlier, we recently signed an MOU with LG Energy Solution, the major Korean lithium battery manufacturer, who are now in the process of establishing a facility to make lithium batteries in Ontario. And the government has assured them they'll support creating the supply chains. So since we have the most advanced project in the whole province, then they want to work with us on helping us get it started. So that's good news. And we have lots of other interest in the lithium hydroxide product from other EV manufacturers in Europe and other parts of the world. So everything's looking good for us to be able to take advantage of all this new demand here going forward. And this slide I've used before just to give you an idea of what the numbers look like in terms of the valuation. We first did a PEA on producing lithium hydroxide back in 2016. And obviously at that time, the prices were a lot lower. But we created another model here just using a longer-term price assumption of $20,000 a ton compared to the original $11,000 a ton. And you can see how this will make a very profitable operation going forward, especially if we get a lot of the funding to build the refinery from partner and government funding. And briefly, I mentioned the cesium a little bit earlier, but we have another project called LilyPad in Northern Ontario. It's a little bit more remote location, so we're not quite ready to try to advance it to production yet, but it's looking very attractive as a potential significant producer of cesium. Cesium is in very short supply now too, and has so much potential in new technologies because it's the most electropositive element on the periodic table, and that which means any compound it forms is extremely stable. And it's used in atomic clocks, GPS, specialty glasses, ion propulsion motors, et cetera, and lots of potential there. And I think it's a matter of starting to inspire more research on other ways it can be used in new technologies. I'm sure there are lots more. And it's in very high demand now and very short supply. And as it says at the bottom there, it's selling for as much as $5,000 a kilo now as cesium carbonate. And that's where we're located. Thunder Bay is just off the bottom of the map here, but this is Lake Nipigon. So we're in an area not far from the Ring of Fire, which has been getting quite a bit of attention lately. And the Ontario government now is promising to get the access infrastructure built there. So we'll probably be able to take advantage of that to get access to our property over here, which is located near an Indigenous community called Fort Hope, home of the Iabamatang First Nation, and focus on getting a cesium supply out of there. Because we have a very unique situation there that is unique globally in that we have a dike that pollucite is one of the main minerals in the dike throughout the whole dike. We don't know how big it is yet, but we know it's at least several 100,000 tons and maybe a lot bigger than that. So this is a very interesting situation, and we've already done some test work on how we can recover the pollucite very efficiently using sensor-based ore sorting. And briefly, I wanted to mention our East Kempville project because we continue to try to get that one going and get BHP out of the way from blocking our access. And I'm getting more and more attention now from the provincial government on recognizing how this is a really important new economic development opportunity for the province of Nova Scotia. So I think it's just a matter of time now before we are able to do that. And one thing I've been trying to get people better informed on here is that tin is a very important metal in a whole lot of new technologies. This was a study done by Rio Tinto at MIT a few years ago, and the demand for it continues to grow, and they continue to innovate more and more technologies that need tin. Then this next slide provides a list of some of the new technologies that are using tin more and more innovative ways. The main one that has been important is using it for solders on electronic circuit boards, smartphones, and other electronic devices. But it may well be important in various applications in electric vehicles, including in lithium battery anode technologies. It's used in solar energy systems, 5G communications, and there's lots more potential for tin and new technology. Most people don't understand how it's become an important technology metal, but it's starting to get more and more recognition now. And East Kempville was the only ever primary tin producer in North American history. There's no other example of a tin Grison deposit like this in North America, so a unique opportunity to try to reactivate it, create tin supply, and take advantage of all the other elements that are present in tin Grison deposits. Briefly on the history, it was discovered back in the 70s, first developed in the 80s by Rio Algom, but unfortunately for them, they hit a bad cycle in terms of market prices. Prices dropped and they closed it prematurely in 1992 because of a drop in tin prices. But there's still lots of resources in the ground, as well as some 25 million tons of waste on surface that now represent a really interesting opportunity because the recoveries on the tin were not that good, less than 50% on average. So there's lots of tin in the tailings, and there's some stockpiles there of material because the price of tin was dropping while they were operating. They stockpiled material that didn't meet the cutoff grade at the time, and now there's millions of tons there of ore that current tin prices is pretty darn attractive as an easy way to start to produce some tin. And lots of in-the-ground resources there too. But one of the things that's really it got my attention there is that tin resources like this have a lot of other elements in them there too. So the original developer, Rio Algom, never tried to recover any byproducts from the resource. There was a little bit of copper and zinc produced there, but resources like this always have indium associated with the zinc mineral sphalerite, and often there's gallium germanium with it, and the wall rocks contain a lot of lithium as polylithiumite and zinwaldite. And there are several examples in Europe now, especially in Cornwall in the UK, where people are looking at reactivating old tin mines, not only to recover tin, but also to look at recovering lithium from the waste there too. So that's a very interesting opportunity to also recover lithium in this and a lot of other elements that are needed in new technologies. So our model for this is to do it in stages here and start by processing those stockpiles and recovering the tin mineral cassiterite using sensor-based ore sorting. We did a bunch of test work with a European company, Chronomet, a few years ago before BHP blocked us from getting started. And it worked very well, actually, as a way to recover the tin mineral cassiterite very efficiently. And the next thing to do is, one of the reasons there was so much lost in the tailings is because it's very friable mineral that's easily overground and then makes it more difficult to recover. So we want to see if there's better ways to liberate it to reduce those losses. And then while we're doing that, start to look at recovering some of the other elements and how that can be done efficiently using new extraction techniques, especially on the lithium from the waste rocks. And then the main environmental liability there has been acid mine drainage. And there's a new technology that we'd like to try there called the nanobeads that can be used to recover the elements that are dissolved in the acid mine drainage. So it's lots of stuff there that can be recovered in very new and modern, efficient ways. And lastly, there's our management team, the board of directors. Chief Harvey Yesno joined our board at the end of last year. He was chief of the Iabamatong First Nation at Fort Hope near Lily Pad, actually. And I've known him for a long time, and he's been very good at starting to inform more of the First Nations leaders across northwestern Ontario about this opportunity that these new lithium supply chains are creating for the Indigenous economy in the north, and helping me inform them that you don't have to worry about anything toxic in a lithium pegmatite. When lithium gets in the water, it's good for human health. And he's doing a good job of that, actually. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to start to inspire more interest from First Nations in getting involved in producing lithium and getting more involved in the economy. So I guess I'm getting near the end of my time here. I'll leave it there and look forward to your questions.
Great job, Don. We do have some questions for you. Steve Marcusio wants to know if you can provide a timeline for the production of trial quantities of pedalite now that Avalon is moving away from DMS facility and has access to an alternative processing facility.
Yeah, so we have a potential partner there that wants to help us get started on producing the pedalite concentrates. And they have a facility in the US that they're going to give us access to that we can send our bulk sample to for processing to recover the pedalite concentrates and provide all the manufacturers that have expressed interest in it with the trial quantities that they all need before they'll give you a firm commitment on an order for purchasing it.
Great. Richard Gonda wants to know if you have the appropriate permits to mine the lithium.
Well, we've got most of the work done there, and there's still a little bit more to do once we've fully defined the whole process and scale of the operation. But we're not anticipating any significant delays there because there's so much support now from the provincial government on seeing these lithium supply chains get started here. And it's a matter, as I mentioned earlier, of educating the public that there's nothing in a lithium pegmatite that represents a hazard to the environment.
Okay. A follow-up question from Richard. Do you have current PEA?
Yep. Yeah, we first did a PEA back in 2019, 1999, 2000. And we've updated it a couple of times, but we're now in the process of doing a further update as we look at how we can apply alternative.
And Richard wants to know how we should think about the overall risk, or is it merely operational?
Yeah, at this point, it's just operational. You've got to be able to produce the product and meet the specifications of the buyers in the market. So that's where the risk is. But as soon as you can prove that by producing the initial trial quantities, then you'll get the firm commitment on the offtake, and then you can start creating more supply. And I think once you get a good reputation on being a solid supplier of this material, then you'll get more and more demand going forward, because there's starting to be more and more innovation on other types of high-strength glass products. In fact, I think it's probably part of the future of electric vehicles too, using it in the windshields as part of the lightweighting strategy.
Interesting. I'm sure it's going to be used a lot in a lot of ways. Brad Carter wants to know, how long does your current funding take you before you need to raise more money?
We'll probably have to raise some more before too long here, like later this year.
Okay. And Wes Fitzgerald wants to know, how far are you from significant revenue?
A few months.
Okay.
Because we're going to start to be able to generate revenue from the initial sales of the pedalite product from the bulk sample.
And okay, sorry, go on, sir.
And the pricing we're getting on it looks very attractive now too. Probably at least 5 or 6 times higher than what our production costs are going to be.
Arnold Blanchard says, based on no news flow mentioning ESSAR, is it fair to assume no JV is in play and that currently Avalon shareholders can presume they have 100% upside to the lithium resources?
Well, they're still interested, and it's a matter now of seeing how we'll get them involved. But I think they were probably inspired by our news last week on LG wanting to get involved in it too. So we'll see. Okay.
Christine Farmer wants to justify value and asks how you mentioned China is the main supplier. How does that influence Avalon?
Well, no, they're not a supplier. They're a consumer of a lot of this stuff, and that's why they keep buying up other resources so they can be sure of having the adequate supply, because they've established the processing capacity in China now to take the mineral concentrates and turn them into the battery material products and other types of end-use products. So that's where they are the leaders now, and why they're out trying to acquire more and more resources so they can be sure of having adequate supply for their process facilities in China.
Okay. Janice wants to know if you're involved in cobalt as well.
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
Could get into it. Look, we'll keep our eyes open for cobalt opportunities too. But we're still thinking rare earths too.
Right, right. Well, Mike Kelly wants to know, what other spaces are you looking at besides lithium, glass ceramics, and maybe cobalt?
Well, in terms of just battery materials or other critical minerals for clean technology?
I'd say other critical minerals.
Well, we still have an interest in our Nechalacho rare earths resource in the Northwest Territories, and things have been advancing there pretty well, actually. Our Australian partners are getting started now on producing some of the light rare earths from the near surface resources, and they have successfully inspired the province of Saskatchewan to start creating more of the downstream processing capacity needed to do this separation on the mixed rare earth concentrates that you can produce. And they're now actually also starting to produce some of the magnet metals from the oxides of neodymium and praseodymium. So we're pretty close now to getting the whole supply chain started in Canada, and that hopefully will inspire more demand going forward and give us the opportunity to develop the resource that we still have on the Nechalacho property too.
Great. Tom Grant wants you to talk about your agreement to purchase petalite concentrates and any other materials. Where do you see prices going? Up with inflation, and will that eat into future profits?
Well, it's looking like it'll be quite a profitable business, because we're going to get over $1,000 a ton for the petalite concentrates, and they probably won't cost much more than a couple $100 a ton to produce. So it'll be quite a profitable business.
Great. Damon Green wants to know regarding the refinery plant, are you planning on using this for third parties as well? Do you have any projections on cost and revenue?
Yeah, that's the vision we have, is we can create the initial supply and then hopefully inspire more producers of lithium mineral concentrates from the many other resources in northwestern Ontario to create additional supply, and then we can be a buyer of those concentrates too, to process them there. So that's a better way to accommodate increased production going forward, because as I said earlier, the processing facility is by far the most expensive part of getting that supply chain started. But other new producers can start producing concentrates and won't cost a lot of money to be able to do that using new technology like sensor-based ore sorting.
Mark Jensen wants to know, who are the customers for when you're producing cesium at LilyPad?
Well, there are none really in North America, but there are lots in Japan that are looking for a new supply source.
Okay, good. And Lenny Strickland wants to know if there's any infrastructure hurdles you need to get over for any of your properties.
Well, no, nothing major, actually. As I mentioned, we have pretty good access to the site there now. And because we're close to a hydro dam, we're going to be able to get a transmission line to give us hydropower, electrical power, to power the operation at the separation rapids site. And our site in Thunder Bay that we want to establish the refinery on, it has all the necessary infrastructure there. It has both access to both railways, gas transmission lines, hydro lines, a dock, warehouse, an office building, and lots of land there to establish the refinery on. And it's big enough that I think we'll be in a position to be able to expand it over time as the demand grows, which it almost certainly will.
Perfect. And Ryan Steen wants to know, do you see a deal to be made with BHP in the near future?
BHP are a classic example of a major mining company that's stuck in the past and can't see the future with these non-traditional commodities. They're only interested in bulk exchange traded commodities. So no, unless there's a management change there that brings in some new people that understand these opportunities, not likely.
And last question for you, Don, from Richard Gonda. What institutions, if any, own the stock? And can we expect a re-rating? And if so, when?
Well, there's not a lot of institutional shareholders, actually. We have over 20,000 shareholders all over the world. And many of them are in the U.S., actually, and have been long time shareholders, retail shareholders from Rare Earth Days that recognize that we probably would have another day. And so they've been patiently waiting for that day to come, and it looks like it's coming. So,
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on all this progress, and thank you for joining us again. Please come back again in the future with some updates, Don.
well, yep. We're doing it again next week.
Yes, we will. Thank you for that reminder. We will be seeing you at our metals conference that's happening next Wednesday. So thank you so much for joining us again. That'll be a nice niche conference we'll be hosting. So we'll see you next week.
Maybe we'll have some more news too.
Okay. We look forward to it, and we love news over here. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, what a great conference. So many different companies from around the world. That's what's so great about us here at Emerging Growth. In just a moment, you're going to be redirected to the registration page for our next conference. Remember, we do have a special battery metals conference happening next Wednesday. So check out our website for more information about that. On behalf of all of us at Emerging Growth, thanks to all of our presenters and to our attendees for making this such a great success. Remember, there's a complete replay of this conference separated by company. It's on our Emerging Growth Conference YouTube, emerginggrowthconference.com, and also on our Twitter at Emerging Growth C. I'm Anna Berry, and on behalf of myself and everyone who made this event possible, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week and then the following.